where we are right now is at the beginning of an opportunity that a lot of folks are not recognizing, because as always with opportunity, there's a hidden aspect to it. And it's a sneaky sort of silent opportunity. And what that is a $68 trillion wealth transfer that's about to happen. $68 trillion is the amount of wealth that the baby boomer generation has amassed. And they've been the most prolific earning generation in history. And they have all of this wealth mostly in the form of closely held businesses. And these businesses are going to be transferred. But here's the tricky thing. It looks an awful lot, all this wealth that's going to be transferred, it's dressed up as roofers. It's dressed up as a plumbing outfit. It's dressed up as really
not sexy stuff.
Yes, it's unsexy businesses that just print money. And the reason that it's sort of, I think it's a hidden thing, is it's a lot of these folks thought that they would have, either children or, employees who would want to take over the business. But the darn thing is, 27-year-old doesn't want to take over dad's
it's not hot
roofing company. He wants to stand in the bar and talk to his buddies about NFTs and cryptocurrency because that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, Los, but what I think is cool is making money.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity in this, right? Like I was poor in 2000. In 2007, I had money. In 2008, I was legitimately poor. But I was a kid, right? And I was probably one of these idiots. And I didn't realize that we were in a recession. I was just like, I'm poor. What the hell? What happened? Like all these construction companies are going out of business. I was doing home automation in construction companies. I didn't see an opportunity because I saw like pain, right? And that's now what I said to myself as I was getting older. I was like, man, I can't wait for another recession because now I know what to do with it.
Isn't that crazy? I feel the same way. I'm sitting here for 2 years like, come on, market,
dude,
go down.
I thought that COVID was going to create it, and I had planned everything with everyone here, and I was like, guys, this is time to crush. And I mean, we crushed because it was people thought it was a recession again, but really it was an opportunity. And you live in a group of people that like, they crave that. It's also the kind of people that crave pain, masochists, entrepreneurs, like people that are like, I'll do hard work, I'll crush you. You know what I mean? Because right now we're in a place where you either are watching the news and you believe that we're in a recession, or you're hanging out with a different crowd of people and you believe there's a massive shift in opportunity to crush. And that does mean e-commerce. You can roll up businesses in e-commerce. You can do, I think one of the biggest businesses that are going to boom right now in the next 3 to 5 years are service businesses, whether it's agencies, whether it's roofing, any type of service business, because people are going to go back to like, I don't know how to do this. I need the money. How do I work with a person to get this done, right? I also think that creators, personal brands that are building opportunities and building audiences and communities, if they are smart and they don't do affiliate stuff, which will make them good money, but if they build their own thing, they're going to be able to crush and leverage that community as well. So I think it's really kind of, it's beautiful. It's like a blue ocean of opportunities to crush. The people that are probably going to go down a little bit are the people that never were good at stuff, right? The coach consultant guy that like just teaches you how to teach people how to teach people. That guy's probably going to work at, Piggly Wiggly, right? But the guy that's like, I know how to do that, but let me go back to doing it instead of teaching it and doing it as a service. That guy's going to solve people's problems. Because right now with fear, the only money that gets allocated is solve my problem for me. And then the other one is like, make me feel this insecurity away, right? Like if I buy a coach or whatever, I'm trying to feel my insecurities away. I'm trying to give them to you so you can help solve them, right? Which goes back to solving problems. And like you said, the other thing is what no one looks at. No one looks at the local marketing, right? And I don't mean start a restaurant. That's always hard. And no matter what economy you're in, the margins are horrible and blah, blah, blah. But it's, can we make pools? Can we do HVAC? Can we do that work that needs to be done no matter what? If recession, no recession, you get a new house, you're going to need a pool in Florida. You have no AC, you're going to need to get fixed. You need your lawn mowed, you need to do that. And this person, like you said, they're 65, 70 years old. They have a son. Their son always got money for free, maybe did a little bit of the handiwork or whatever the case. They don't want it anymore. because they realize, oh man, this isn't that much of a business. You made all your money through your network and all your people. You never knew how to carry a right P&L. You never knew how to do things correctly. Now I'm kind of walking into a mess. I don't have your friend group. They're already exhausted as far as like clientele. We don't really have budget for leads and ads, and I don't even know how this business works. I don't want it, Dad or Mom. And they're like, okay, well, what do? Should I just close it? I don't know how to go to a broker and sell this thing. There comes Los and JB, and we're like, hey, dude, this is a good business. Do you want to retire? Well, I can't retire. What do you make? 10,000 a month? You look at it and you're like, cut. I'll give 15,000 a month for 4 years. And after that, I'll give you another maybe 50,000 for the fifth year. But I'm going to take over, and I'm going to own 100% of the business. But you're going to be carried through this no matter what happens, right? If a business goes down, I'm going to have to owe you this money, and we'll carry that over. And if not, then if I make more, that's because I built a business. You come in with operational infrastructure, logical P&Ls, and like really running it like an actual company. You pay yourself small because you're really taking all the dividends of the growth. You go out and get John, Jim, and Harry, who have different local sectors in Orlando, Altamont Springs, and Longwood. And you're like, all right, now I got 3 markets. I'm rolling this thing over. I own it. Then you crush. You make money. You can keep it like that. Or you can say, hey, I got a roll up now of small business over here, or a roll up in services, and you can do either or, right? Do you want a cash flow, or I call it a checking and savings? Do you want to make checking account money? Like, all right, that's my cash flow, I'm doing it. Or are we gonna kind of suffer a little bit here because we're gonna get a savings account, which means like I'm gonna get real money back?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't have to be either or, really, because you can view that as, how do I build cash flow? And there are a number of different ways you can build cash flow, and you can acquire cash flowing assets specifically for their cash flow. And then you also have a play where it's a little bit more about net worth. And the net worth play usually happens upon an exit event, a capital inducing event. And the interesting thing about these businesses that we're talking about right now, and it's not exclusive to home services, just to be clear, it's really any business that no matter what happens, people are going to still need to do it. You know, one of the reasons that I love home services is if your roof is leaking,
you have to
fix it. Like, it's
if
not,
you have no AC, you have to.
Yeah, I live in Atlanta, and
unless you live in LA, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Atlanta, so if it's 100 degrees outside and my kids and wife are inside, and they're like, the AC's broken, I'm going to move hell and high water to get someone there to fix it. It really doesn't matter.
And there's no payment plan here, buddy. No, it's 10 grand.
Stroke a check. Here you go.
Stroke 10 grand.
A little bit like dental is a similar business, actually. So dental is a great business to be in. And no, you don't necessarily have to be a dentist, believe it or not, to own a dental company, but we don't need to get deeply into that. But if you have a busted tooth and you're in pain, when's the last time that you're like, well, how much is it going to cost for you to not have, for me to not be in pain? You're not going to ask that question.
I chipped my tooth like 5 years ago at a New Year's party. I fell into a motorcycle. Stupid idiot. I just tripped. Just literally, it was the silliest thing that happened. And the next day there was nothing, right? Because it was January 1st. It was like I would breathe and like cold air would just hit my, like, oh man. The next day, $2,000 for one tooth. Yeah. And I couldn't wait to pay it.
Take my money.
Yeah.
Just make it stop hurting. So industries where, Buffett would call that a moat. Industries where you have a moat because of the nature of what the product or service is that you're selling are great. But here's the other play. If you acquire one, let's say an average, let's take roofing, for example. If you take a single roofing company, and I've done this before, I've had a lot of clients who've done it before, and it's just a normal, moderate size roofing company that's maybe doing $3 million top line, and it's making $300,000 to $400,000, on average with those margins at that size. Okay, well, that doesn't sound bad, but then if you're not a roofer, you're probably going to have a general manager that you put in there for 85, 90 grand.
You're probably making 100.
Yeah, you're probably making 100. But here's the interesting thing. You can take that same business with the same people that you've just hired, and you can then do that 3 more times. So now you have $12 million top line. All of a sudden, there's an economy of scale that's working in your favor in 2 ways. One, your own net revenue, your income just went up significantly because you don't have to hire 3 times as many people to run a company 3 times the size. That's not how that works. The other thing that's beneficial is that you get an arbitrage play. What is arbitrage? It's buying something at one price, adding things to it, and selling it at a much higher price. So if you have one business versus 4 or 3, the exit price for that business that you bought in the first place is going to be maybe 1 times its revenue at best. If you have 4 of them and you're at 12 million, that's an entirely different conversation. Why? Because you've just drastically changed your buyer pool. Bigger companies that are looking to gobble up companies like that in a capital event, they're not really interested whatsoever in anything below $5 million. You get above that level, and all of a sudden you have people that are willing to pay 5 or 6 times what the company is really worth or doing. So you have this way to take an opportunity that is somewhat unsexy or underutilized or underappreciated by some and run to it. What else is happening right now is, depending upon whom you believe, we are at the beginning, middle, or about to be in a recession. The banks are starting to fail. You're having some of these worst case moments that are happening with currency and cash flow and cash availability, the way that some of these banks structured the deals that they were doing. So normally what happens in those situations, everybody panics. And they'll panic sell and they'll get out.
Including the entrepreneur, because now they're like, oh my God, it's a lot of mindset stuff. They're like, oh, the bank's not working. My business is going down. Business is the same. But they're like, now they're freaked out. They can't carry this loan or whatever the case. And you can walk in there. Buying businesses is the same as buying real estate.
Yep.
Like literally the same. You can come in that deal and be like, oh man, let me do a creative financing deal. I'll pay what you owe you got a $300,000 SBA loan, and you've got this overhead. Cool, I got you, and I'm going to pay you X amount monthly, but I'm going to take it over. Same way as you can be like, oh man, you're about to get evicted. I'll get you a house over here, and I'm going to pay rent over here, but now that's my house 100%.
Yeah.
Right, and it's the same with EBITDA. We sell a lot of companies in our brokerage, and a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm an agency, for example, right? An agency, we talked to a guy, and they're doing $2 million top line, they're $5 million top line, $1 million EBITDA, right? And they're like, yeah, I want $7 million for it. Cool. No one's going to give you that because an agency is ever. That's a creative financing deal because it's so small, to be honest with you.
It's too small. Yeah.
Right. And so if you're really looking at it, like EBITDA is based off like rehabs and high-end homes, right? When you have a business in, let's say, e-commerce, the space, and you're like, okay, I have a business that's doing $8 million and it's doing $1 million in revenue right now, but it has no Shopify, it's just Amazon, and it needs this. The person's going to come in and be like, all right, dude, I'll give you 3.5 times for that. And, oh, well, I wanted 6. Well, I've got to buy it at 3.5 times. And then I've got to invest so I can get it to actually 6, right? When someone comes in and they're like, hey, we're doing 10 million and we're doing 4 million EBITDA, I'm picking you up at 6 times revenue. Why? It's almost the same business. No, operational infrastructure is there. Multiple channels are there. A team is there. SOPs are there. So you're buying a mansion, and that one's almost always like, I'll just pay a full price, man. Get out of here, or stay on if you want for a little bit or whatever the case, because you're actually very smart. If you want to stay, whatever. So it's the same. Like you're either buying a rehab, and you're like, I got to get this at a low clip so I can fix it and flip it, or you're buying something that you can just really hold at some point. You're making the bet that this is so good that at least it's going to be doing what it did last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, you have a choice. You can make money either way. You can make money by buying a business that is in some way, shape, or form distressed. And distressed is a relative term. It doesn't necessarily mean that the business isn't profitable. It doesn't mean that
it could mean it's being operated incorrectly.
Absolutely. It could mean that it's operating in a way that is obsolete. Here's a great example. A lot of those home services companies that we were talking about, it's run by someone who's in their 70s now, and they've been doing it for 30 or 40 or 50 years.
All their leads are Bud Light bros.
That's it. And when you ask them about biz dev and tech stack and marketing, you get glazed looks. And it's like, well,
and they go back and they're like, I don't need that stuff.
Well, we had somebody who was doing yellow pages for us, and then about 15 years ago, they started doing this thing called the Facebook. So what they did was they put up a page for the Facebook, and they tried to get some people to like it. What's weird about it is we got a bunch of customer fan people on the Facebook that are in the Philippines and also in the Czech Republic. I'm not really sure why, but we do, and so we've been real happy with that. Well, how many leads did it generate? Well, I don't know, because
no CRM.
No CRM. They don't, and I don't mean to make light of it. It's just they're
that was a good accent.
You live in Georgia long enough, They're awesome people, wonderful, truly wonderful, salt of the earth people that I have enormous respect for, because they built a business at a time when, candidly, in many ways, it was a lot harder to do than it is today. But they just. It's the thing that, you've got a consulting background or for us, we've done so many brokerage deals in my own M&A career. The phrase that I always love to hear, because I know immediately there's going to be money here to be made, is, well, that's the way we've always done it. And when I hear that's the way we've always done it, immediately I'm looking for $100 bills on the floor because usually that means that there's just been
no innovation, no
none.
KPIs, no goals, no metrics.
No.
You wake up every day, we got to get money.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Instead of like, what are we making quarterly? What are the goals weekly? Like, what are the KPIs that need to move the needle for us to actually like increase by X% per year?
Absolutely. And often what really makes you feel for those folks is they find themselves now looking down the barrel of retirement. And they're in their 70s and they've worked their fingers to the bone. And yes, they've built, hopefully a significant nest egg and they put money away and they've got the money. They don't really need the money anymore. But the problem is the business itself is a little bit challenging to sell in its current state to somebody who doesn't quite know what to do with it and understand what they're getting, because these people find themselves in what I call key man's prison. Key man's prison is simply, yes, you have a profitable business, but you're so used to the business running around you and everything that you do and everything that you provide for the business that if somebody else were to come in and take over, it would be an absolute epic disaster. And the business would, if you really, the litmus test is, in any given day, can you leave your business for a month and then come back and it's still there and running just fine?
Making money.
And most of those folks can't say that because
most people can't say that. I would say we say the same thing to online entrepreneurs, and they're like, if you take a week off, what happens? Nothing. If you take a month off, what happens? Shit, man.
Yeah,
like
that's no good.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's because you haven't built the team, you haven't built the structure, you haven't built the operational efficiency to make this thing stand. I always think that I'm the worst part of most businesses, and I want it to be that way totally. Because I want people that are smarter than me making things work and build a culture where they're fulfilled financially, emotionally, and spiritually, because that way people won't leave.
Well, it's the best part of the American story, right? So you can build a business that serves a community well, that solves a problem. That's all we're doing here in business, right? Ideally, if you're identifying a problem that is painful or uncomfortable or people can't solve on their own, and you're helping them to solve that problem in exchange for a fee, that's all we're doing. Everybody's happy. What's better than that when you can do that and provide jobs, income, revenue for families? It is the American dream, but there are some things that are changing so fast that if you're not leveraging things in these unsexy businesses or any really, or even understanding them, like, what is a tech stack? What does automation look like? What things that maybe we haven't automated before could potentially be automated? What processes or procedures do we have that are obsolete or irrelevant? How does artificial intelligence factor into a business? And you're going to say, well, hang on, JB, AI, I get it. I hear all this. AI does not factor into my roofing business.
Yes, it does.
I completely disagree with that. And here's why. What can AI do? AI can write you a business plan in 3 minutes. AI can write you a marketing plan that's decent.
AI can set your appointments for you.
Set your appointments for you. It can write a sales script for you. Now, is it going to be perfect? No, but it eliminates
do your P&Ls for you since you probably don't know how to do it.
You don't know how to do it, and it eliminates what I call blank page syndrome. You know what blank page? You ever feel that? Like you have to get something done. Maybe you have to write a marketing plan, or you have to write some copy for your page or your website, and you stare at this blank page. And even those of us who've been doing that for years, I always stare at it, and I'm just sort of like nothing happens. It's like 15 minutes later. I can take ChatGPT, put a few prompts in there.
It gets you warmed up, gets you moving.
Everything there. And then all I'm really doing is I'm optimizing what it just spit out, because you still need a human being's discernment.
It's not that smart. It's very basic to certain degrees. There are two others it's very smart. But when it comes to like specificity of like the avatar and the business, and it doesn't know that yet. So, but it can get the ball rolling for you, and it can solve a lot of the copy problems and a lot of the issues. And also it can solve a lot for inefficiencies as a person, which is really why the robot works.
Yeah, 100%. So really it's this concept of you are exactly in business where you want to be and where you've chosen to be. So if you want to have more success, you want to have more, whatever it is, more money, a different lifestyle for your family, more autonomy, more schedule freedom, any of those more type things, or less oversight of a boss, less complexity in your life, less stress, whatever that is. All of those things are achievable from business. You just have to have a thought about what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And here's another thing that is a big hot button for me. This whole concept, like, all you have to do is go find your passion. Go find your passion. Well, here's the thing. I own, at any given time, I own 6 or 7 businesses. I'm generally not particularly passionate about any of the things that they're selling.
But I'm good at solving the problem.
I'm passionate about making those things work, solving the problem, providing value to people, and candidly, providing a great lifestyle for my family. I sure am passionate about that.
Right.
So instead, what I would suggest is figure out, what are you great at? What are you so good at, even if it's one thing? What are you so good at that you can do that and it will disproportionately create a win for you, and everything else that needs to be done in a business? Well, you just bring people in who know what they're doing and get the heck out of their way.
Yeah, business is about solutions, problem solving, leverage, and arbitrage at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you really think about it, every business is an arbitrage. Whether you're arbitraging a product or you're arbitraging humans or you're arbitraging a business for another business, or you're arbitraging EBITDA or human capital, it's you're grabbing something and putting lipstick on it or delivering something else. It is what it is. I think that this is a great opportunity for everybody. I really do encourage people to look at different types of businesses. Everyone gets, especially the people we talk to, right? They're all marketers and different stuff like that. Being an internet marketer is like graduating from Harvard, I think, right? Like, you're doing some of the hardest stuff, like you're testing funnels, split testing, copywriting. Your skill level is like gangster. And you're playing in a gangster league instead of going like, hey, let me go to the right over here and grab this guy who's trying and like scoop this up and add my sauce to it. Or let me go to this guy who's got a roofing business and add my sauce to it. Because it's the same thing. You're running ads, you're running traffic, you're doing the same thing in every business if that's your skill set, right? And if it's not, like, well, I'm just a good copywriter. All right, so you can write copy, you can write ads. Now go get a good guy that's going to buy media, and then go get a great operator, and now you've got the system for any business.
Yeah, I agree. I've always viewed that as, there are a few functions in business that if you are world class or anywhere near it, you can then go and take that and you can dominate just about any industry. And the example that I'll give is marketing. I love that you use marketing. So marketing is especially direct response. So when you're trying to get a customer or a business, an individual person or an entity to make a decision right now, immediately, based upon whatever you have put in front of them, whether that's a sales letter or a piece of copy or even just an ad on Facebook. If you can consistently do that well and you've won at that game, you, to your point, have done that surrounded by people who are also assassins at doing that. And if you've shown any sort of, and then you add the algorithms themselves that change. If people get too good at it, Facebook will change the algorithm. Same with Amazon.
And you have to understand that and switch with it.
Understand what's happening and be nimble and able to change what you're doing. So here's the analogy. If you've shown, whether it's you're a salesperson, you're a marketing person, I would suggest that also certain financial functions are similar. If you've shown that you have an excellent competency level with any of those things, and then you go and take that to just a normal, mundane, Main Street business, and you apply that same skill set, it would be like, to me, Tom Brady retiring from the Tampa Bay Bucks and going to play for Apopka High School. He'd be throwing 90 dimes a month because it would just be so easy for him because of his skill level and his experience in that one thing.
Yes.
So to me, it's repurposing existing skill sets and methodologies of doing things. And then another thing that you and I were talking about this earlier that I think is very relevant to both the $68 trillion wealth transfer and the concept of we may or may not be going into a recession. A lot of folks' instincts who have businesses today now, who maybe were doing really well, are still doing well, maybe are not doing as well as they were, is going to be, well, if we're going to go into a recession, my value today is less than it was 2 years ago. So the instinct is, well, I don't want to sell even though I'm tired and I'm burnt out or whatever that may be, because I'm going to wait until the value goes back up. Well, here's the problem with that logic. One, you and I have seen many times where the value does not go back up.
It goes down.
Comes down again. Two, and this is where the analogy with the real estate market is clutch, because there were so many folks back in 2008, maybe even 2007, that saw a downward trend in their real estate value. And then they began, well, I'm going to hold out. Next thing you know, the house prices dropped 60%. So businesses, here's the thing that I think a lot of folks miss. It's not necessarily about the loss you take on a business that you exit. even if it's not really a loss, maybe it's loss on paper. You made less in 2023 than you could have if you had sold in 2021, depending on the industry you were in. Well, here's the thing. What you really need to do is look at the asset that you own in stark comparison to any other asset that you could purchase today. Because if your business is going down, chances are a lot of others are as well. And so you have to look at it with fresh, neutral eyes with no bias and ignore sunk cost and the opportunity cost that you may have had in this business, because what really matters is on equal footing, if I just look at these with fresh, completely neutral eyes, which one of these assets would I rather own 5 years from now? And if the answer to that is not a clear and resounding this one that you already own, you need to take that out back, shoot it, get what you can for it, and then reinvest those assets and that capital somewhere else that you feel more confident in.
What is the opposite of opportunity?
The opposite of opportunity. I don't know. You got me stumped there.
No, I don't know either. That's what I was asking.
So the opposite, I would say, let me think about that for a second. So I'd say the opposite of opportunity is a lack of opportunity, which said differently would be, no choices. There's no failure, hopelessness.
Yeah, I think it's hopelessness. So you opportunistic people are positive, right? And people that lack opportunity tend to be more in a chaotic state, right? Defeated. And so I think this is really good for people to think through, right? There's a lot of opportunity happening, but opportunity, I think, comes from creativity. And there's the positive creativity, which is controlled creativity, which is how do I make more money? Let me sit down and be like, all right, I've got a personal brand. I can go with this guy and buy a newsletter, build a newsletter from him and create this. I can do a joint venture here. I can do this and create opportunities in a centralized strategic manner. And then there's the other person that sees doom and gloom. They're like, chaotic creativity. How do I just get by? What do I do? And they're being creative about getting by and solving something and being quick in a chaotic manner. And chaos does not create momentum, right? Opportunity creates momentum, but opportunity is done by creativity. So is chaos, but controlled chaos is the maximum version of positive creativity. If you control the chaos, because both are coming from oh shit, what do I do? There's so much, it could be chaotic, but there's so much opportunity here. What do I do? If you control the chaos, you have opportunity. If you cannot control the opportunity, you are just creative and lacking that. And you go back to being chaotic, which is misery.
Well, and look, in every environment, there's opportunity. And this, I think, boils...
If you choose it, though.
Yes, I think you're dead on. So you'll appreciate this. I once bought a business. The lead to acquire this business, I found it in the grocery store. So I was picking out strawberries. I remember it. So I was picking out strawberries, and I overheard. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but this lady was upset, and I could hear her having her conversation. And she was of a certain age where some folks get to a certain age, and for whatever reason, they have their phone conversations on speaker, no matter where they are. And this lady was yelling into this call, and what I heard was essentially she had this business. She was in a little bit of a crunch. It wasn't growing. She didn't know what to do with it. There was a partnership issue. And so she gets off the phone, and just me being me, I was like, man, that sounds like a tough conversation, man. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard the whole thing. And she's like, yeah, it's tough. My business partner wants out, and neither one of us really have the heart to do this anymore. And I was like, well, I buy businesses. That's all it was. And she's like, you do? I said, yeah, absolutely. Hey,
what you got?
Hey, what kind of business is it? She tells me. I'm like, I'll tell you what. Let me buy you coffee tomorrow, and we'll flesh it out, and I'll see something there. And sure enough, it was a business that was a service-based business, and it wasn't doing huge revenue. I think the most that it had ever done was 750, something like that, a year, and it probably netted
150.
Yeah, 150. It might have been 175. And they had been running a lot of ad backs through it and paying for all their stuff out of it, and that was actually an interesting part of the story, because there was a belief by those two, just out of ignorance, not a mean level of ignorance, but literal ignorance, that they didn't understand what an ad back was. So in their mind, they thought that they needed to have shame that they were paying for everything out of their business. I mean, they had relatives on payroll, they had cell phones going through it, cars, all kinds of grocery bills. And it's like, listen,
it was their checking account.
It's okay. It's okay. That happens. It's not ideal.
Happens often.
But as long as I can discern what everything is and what the story is, I'm good, because then I kind of know how to value it. And that's what we ended up doing. And I bought it, and I only owned it for about 6 months, and I flipped it for a profit. And even so that's a small number. we've had that same conversation on the brokerage side, because so the neat thing about you and I, and a lot of our kind of peer group and friend group that we're close with, not only are we brokers, but we did not decide to be brokers who dabbled in business. We are businessmen and women who decided to
Build a broker. We actually bought a brokerage.
Yeah, because and mostly because we shared a philosophy on this, that it was every time we interacted with a broker, the experience was so poor that it was very much like, this is terrible. This is an industry that's just ripe for disruption.
100%.
So that's we did it. But the cool thing about the story that I just told is we see the same thing play out, but at a much higher level with way more zeros. So it's the exact same conversation where we'll talk to a buyer and they're like, oh, I don't know if it's ready to sell. I might need to wait a year. Well, why do you need to wait a year? Well, there's some stuff, and you have to like drag it out of them. But eventually what you get to is, well, we spent $190,000 on vacations for my family. Whatever, that's fine. We'll just add it back. As long as we can tell the story, that's not something that a buyer's going to do. So actually that's a good thing, because your profitability just looked a lot better because you're running all kinds of stuff through there that they will not.
Yes.
So it ends up being sort of this cat and mouse game where, getting back to my grocery store conversation, winners and people who have a mindset of let's figure out how to make a deal, you'll find deals everywhere that you go. Every single place I go, I'm looking for deals. And I have, whether it was a referral type thing, sometimes there's nothing in it for me. I might sit next to you on an airplane. This happens all the time. And you might say to me,
the right person.
Yeah, hey, I'm really struggling with this, or I do this. You know something? You seem like a good dude. I know somebody who might be able to help you. I can't vouch for you because I don't know you that well, but what I will do is I'll make an introduction. Would that be helpful to you? Same thing. People have done that for me. So just being willing to open your eyes and look around and realize that in the midst of the chaos that you're talking about is enormous opportunity everywhere. And the way that I have been able to activate my own mind regularly, because we all shut down sometimes. Crazy stuff happens, the news cycle gets weird, external events, kids, life happens. And sometimes you can shut down into this sort of sky is falling, Chicken Little mode. And the way that I always overcome that is I remind myself that it's always about imagining you already having the success that you wanted, and then thinking retroactively, okay, maybe it's true that this isn't possible, but if it was, how did I do it? If it was possible, how will I do it? Because what you're doing is bypassing the part of your brain that's sort of the negative shutdown, non-problem solving, and you're opening up your problem-solving ability. Mm-hmm. And that's when you get into a flow state and you're seeing opportunity in the middle of chaos.
Yeah, 100%. Like with our agencies, right? Like I have the agency separated, and it's hard to sell agencies, realistically speaking. You got to hit them to a certain EBITDA. And then I used to have one big one, chop them into multiple ones. And when I did that, I realized, oh man, I just have to do 2 million here, 2 million there, 2 million there to do 8 million. And that's insane on an EBITDA level, right? Because that changes everything. Like, well, I own the majority of most of them, so I can just roll them up. Mm-hmm. Oh, crap. And then I started talking to other guys. Like, do you like where you're at? Like, how's that going? I don't know. Like, listen, why don't you do this? Why don't you give me a percentage of that agency? And in the next 2 years, I'm going to get this, you're going to roll in. And how it's going to go is basically whatever EBITDA that is valued at, you're going to get that percentage of what the percentage we told you, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You can do this with any business. You can do this with any scenario. A lot of deal making is creativity, right? It is creative. Unless you're just a venture fund or whatever. You're like, hey, I got whole cold hard cash, boom. And that's a different game, right? For the small business person, whatever the case, we help a lot of people structure creative deals, either to sell it or to buy things as well. And we talk about that a lot in our ventures group. So if you guys are ever interested in learning about that, just DM myself or JB on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Real JB Brown.
Mine's at Los Hustle. So just DM us and we can jam. The reason mine is Los Hustle is because I got...
Make sure that you don't do fake JB Brown. That guy is not okay.
That guy's an asshole.
He's a total asshole.
Yeah, I did send him crypto though. But yeah, so there's a lot of opportunity here, guys. And what we really wanted to kind of cement today is that there's so much more you can do by just being controlled and creative and not thinking chaotically and thinking that you also can do it, right? There's SBA loans that we're
and you don't need permission. You do not need anyone's permission to go out there and make it happen.
No, and there's a lot with the government, just like they do PPP, ERC. They've been giving money away in the world for SBA programs. Yeah. They want you, listen.
That pandemic thing is not new. People are like, only time in history. No, it's not.
Listen, there's no to me, there's no Republicans, there's no Democrats, there's capitalists. And that's the business of America at the end of the day. Like everyone is a capitalist, and whether you're employed by a capitalist or you are a capitalist, you're in this world, I promise you. So that's it for us on this one, guys. We appreciate it, and we will talk to you on the next one. Me and JB got some good stuff coming up on a potential podcast we're launching here, so stay tuned. We'll see you later. Subscribe. We'll talk soon. Bye.